Hey everybody, it's Regan Archibald with Your Healthy Self, and we're so happy you guys are here today because we've got some phenomenal things to talk about. So stick around because who you're going to hear from is Nathan Haley. He's the owner of Element Cryotherapy and Wellness. And so we've got some fun things to talk about for those of you who would love freezing yourself. You guys know I've been on a year-long challenge of ice baths, and so I've got a couple more weeks left. And I've done cryotherapy and love it. So we're going to talk about that. But before we jump in, I want to just kind of debrief you on our hack last night. What we talked about last night, Nathan, we have these health accelerator challenges we take our audience through and our great patients through. And so these hacks stand for Health Accelerator Course. And so we give them challenges every week. The challenge for this week, for those of you who missed it last night, is no sugar, no artificial sweeteners, no artificial flavors. Just get rid of that stuff and get in more hydration. So, Ken Baird, our physician assistant down in St. George, Utah, did a great job sharing that. So, if you're not a part of our hack community, you can easily find us. You go to AccuEast East West and look at Hack on our website and get signed up there. We'd love to have you on. So, without further ado, let's jump into the show. So today we're going to be talking about some of the Crown red light therapy. So light, as you know, if you're not familiar with it, many of us we love biohacking. We love the spectrums of light that can come, and so Nathan's an expert in both the cryotherapy side of things and the light therapy. He's a graduate of BYU. He intended to be a lawyer, and we've never had a lawyer, even someone who intended to be a lawyer, on the show. So known that, you probably wouldn't have been asked to be on, but we're gonna have to let it slide. Just joking, all you. Okay,
Love it.
but Nathan discovered his journey began in 2015. He discovered his testosterone levels has tanked. He was feeling exhausted, achy, unable to gain and retain healthy muscle. And when regular testosterone injections simply didn't produce the ultimate relief he needed, he turned to the world of biohacking. With the use of cryotherapy, red light therapy, and other techniques, his body now produces its own hormones the way nature intended. Seeing the change it made in his life made him want to share it with others along with his family. Helping others improve their quality of life is what he lives for. So, Nathan, welcome to the show.
Okay, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Cool.
yes, and really good to have you here. So this is a show where we're gonna just kind of dive into the science, the geeky part about it. But before we do that, tell me about your testosterone. What levels was it at?
So I was actually sub 200 when I first got tested. Um,
How old
Back
are you?
in
You look like you're 20.
right, so I'm 32 now. I was 27 when I first got tested.
Wow.
Yeah, that kind of rocked my world a little bit. And it's funny because when people think of being diagnosed with low testosterone, it seems like such a minor thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it's just one of your hormones. There's so many others that can kind of help balance out. But for me, it really rocked me. I had been going to the gym every morning at 6 in the morning for 2 years, and I couldn't get my bench over 135. I mean, that alone was just enough for me to be pulling my hair out. But
Yeah.
it was all the other things that came along with it. And I wouldn't have got tested if it wasn't for my wife. She noticed my sluggishness, my loss of energy. I I love to take care of projects at home, and it all just fell off. So
Yeah.
she pushed me, got tested, found out those numbers, and yeah, that started a real fun journey. Um, Doing the injections, and it's interesting the information you'll find on the internet when you start looking into TRT is that once you start doing it, that you're on there for good. And
Yeah.
so when I first initially met with doctors, they were telling me, hey, let's improve your diet. So we tried other things first. I tried to switch up my diet, include different kind of hormone boosters, and those didn't help. So that's when we went to the shots. And my wife didn't exactly like needles, so I was sticking the needle in my own hip twice a week. And I
Gotta be
hate needles.
true. Yes, you got to go deep. Yep.
Oh yeah. Well, so my doctor, I actually ended up stumbling on a couple different opinions. And so even that whole side of things, you're getting different perspectives and different opinions. But what they told me is, hey, once you make this decision, you're on it. And so for 3 years, I did those shots. And yes, I was able to increase muscle size. I was able to get projects done and all that good stuff. But man, my quality of life, um, my poor family had to deal with the mood swings, of trying to get the testosterone levels under control. My cholesterol started to spike. I started seeing my inflammation markers were going through the roof. I mean, it was all sorts of stuff. And I just sat there and thought, this can't be it. And like you mentioned in the intro, biohacking. Once I got turned on to biohacking, I was introduced to Ben Greenfield, and I found US Cryotherapy up in Salt Lake.
Okay.
I met the owner up there, Tom. He's a good guy. Talked to me about testosterone and introduced me to red light and cryo. And really, the rest is history. 6 months later, I cycled off of shots completely, and my numbers were 4 times higher than what they were before I started. And it was just by doing a keto diet and making sure I was regularly doing cryo and red light. And I don't know, for me, that was enough of a testimony to just want to be like, all right, everybody needs to know about this stuff. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's so new.
And not to get too, I know we just met, but Ben Greenfield, he's a friend and a patient of ours, but he loves to put the red light right on his balls. Is that,
Yes, he does.
is that
He's
you?
Yes. Yeah. So we have a couple full red light panels here. And so it's interesting. You'll get differing opinions on what's actually needed when it comes to red light. There's a couple different books that you can read about them. And one of my favorite ones that kind of goes through the science, what he suggests is only getting a small light. But then you'll get other experts that'll talk about doing full body red light. And that's personally where, as I've researched it, I've landed as being the most effective, because every aspect of your body needs this light. And
Wow.
so, yes, when it comes to testosterone, I will put them right there, right next to the light. And it's about maintaining that 6-inch distance.
Yeah.
But it's effective. I mean,
Well, you have numbers to prove it, and that's what I love. Biohacking sometimes is so subjective that we can't really quantify our results. But when you look at like homocysteine, I'm taking it. That's probably some of the inflammatory markers you're looking at. C-reactive protein. And when you see those come down, you see your testosterone go up without any, exogenous supply, then you say, okay, maybe I'm on the right track. And light therapy can be powerful. So let's talk a little bit about that, because light therapy, I mean, the sun obviously gives us the full spectrum, and now there's a big movement of people, laying out at new beaches and doing it for health reasons, which is fine. I'm not a big fan of them. It's just still to me, but what's the difference between red light and versus just going out in the sun and getting some great sun exposure?
right. So, kind of looking back and thinking about your high school physics, I'm sure most of our people who are following this podcast are going to, have somewhat of a basic understanding. When you pass natural sunlight through a prism, you're going to see the full spectrum of light, because inside of those light rays contains all the different frequencies of light. And there's only a specific range that is visible to us. And I think it's somewhere between 500 nanometers and 1100 nanometers. And that's where we start to see that visible light. But when it comes to light therapy and the effect that we're looking for with the whole body, ultimately, light therapy is coming down to penetration, and it's penetration of those rays into your body. And so when they've run these studies to look at how light interacts with the body and interacts at a cellular level, they found that each frequency of light, penetrates through our skin at different levels. And so you start to see your greens, your blues on the lower end of the spectrum. They really don't pass through the skin. So you have your derma, but not really getting all the way down into your hyperderma and really getting down into your tissues and your muscles. And that's really why red light and near infrared light are so key, is that they're able to penetrate 3 to 4 inches into your body to really provide the benefit of that light. And so that's really the key when you're talking about light therapy, is looking for what frequencies you're using. So when we do red light therapy here, you go into a room, we have 4 panels that have been mounted on the wall, and each one of those is set to both red light and near infrared light. So you're getting between, I believe it's 600 and 720 nanometers, which penetrates anywhere between 3 to 3.5 inches into the skin. And then you've got your 920 to your 1000 nanometers, which is closer to your near infrared, which penetrates, a little bit deeper. That one's actually really effective for penetrating through bone. So you can feel those benefits to your brain. But it's whole body benefit, as I'm sure you well know. the way that the light interacts on a cellular level is really where we're getting kind of the overall energy production that we need and that we're looking for.
Love it. Yeah, so I mean the vibrations of the light, it's no different. We do a lot of work with binaural beats and isochronic tones. And so just like the sounds that we hear have a vibration, the light has a vibration. And what you're saying is that that infrared light, it will penetrate based on the spectrum that it's in. So it's like you can get out in the sun and you'll get some of that because it's a full spectrum. But if you want to really consolidate it, getting in under these red light tables, or it sounds like you have panels on the wall, so you stand. Which
Mhm.
is great. I've done all kinds. My dentist actually has a little. It looks like you're gonna go get a tan, like one of those. And you jump in there, and so anytime I'm going, I'm like, can I jump in the red light real quick? And so it's awesome.
It is. And it's interesting because you start talking about those vibrations, and that is one aspect of light and how it interacts with that cell. And to me, that's one level where I start to compare it a little bit to like a far infrared sauna. When you start getting into a far infrared sauna, you're using those longer, far infrareds to try and heat the body from the inside out. You're trying to shake, that cell and really get it to push out a lot of the toxins that are on the inside. What I love about red light, and one of the main benefits that's come from these frequencies specifically, is how it affects the mitochondria. And so the panels we actually have are called mito red lights. They take their mito from the beginning half of mitochondria and just the way that it interacts with them. But what it essentially is doing when it penetrates through the cell and it interacts with that mitochondria is that it's allowing it to produce more energy. So those mitochondria, working as power plants for our cells, are utilizing oxygen in order to produce ATP. Well, those red lights have been shown to help improve the amount of oxygen that's able to pass through the mitochondrial walls, which is kind of in turn producing more ATP, more energy for our body. And so we tell clients that come in, you're going to see better hair, skin, nails. And really the reason you're going to see that is because the outside is a reflection of the inside. And so if all of your cells, whether it's a skin cell, liver cell, kidney cell, brain cell, if it's functioning better, your outside is going to be a reflection of that. And you're going to start to see an improvement in your all around health. And it's funny because a lot of these treatments that we have, they overlap, but you start to see these benefits to where we almost joke that it's like we're trying to sell people a magic pill because of the myriad of benefits that come from it. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, you've alluded to some of the benefits that you get from exercise, right? And if you could encapsulate one thing that would, basically be a panacea, it would be exercise. And so, exercise is partially what cleans out our mitochondria. It activates the cell function. There's even a gene. I don't know if you're familiar with peptides much, but I know a lot of our audience. We do a lot of peptide work, peptide therapy, and there's a peptide called MOD-SC. And you'd like this one, Nathan, because MOD-SC is activated when you do light therapy. And MOD-SC it's a mitochondrial derived peptide, so it cleans up that gene that allows for ATP production and energy production. So it allows your body it activates the GLUT4 transporters in the cell, so you actually get sugar and glucose into the cell without the presence of insulin. So one thing that people are getting when they do light therapy, based on your explanation, is they're getting the MOD-SC activation, and then that means they're getting more energy right into their cell. And then anytime you can get that wheel turning, your body's going to detox so much better. So,
Definitely.
so what do you feel like? I mean, I know, from a subjective experience, I always feel just calm. My nervous system feels so good. I know when I walk into like Costco or like a store with all the crazy lights, school, right? We all went to school with like the worst lights possible. What's
Mhm.
your take on that? And what's the difference between the standing in the red light versus being exposed to the Costco craziness with those kinds of lights? Sorry,
Right.
Costco.
Sorry, not sorry, Costco. They get mad at me for my mask stance, so we'll apologize, but not fully. Um,
Good for
no,
you.
right? No. So honestly, when you start getting into a lot of these bulbs they have now, what they're starting to find is a lot of these iridescent bulbs, these full spectrum bulbs that we have, actually start causing a little bit of damage. The frequencies that they're putting off, they just don't feed our bodies. And I know it sounds weird to say that. It's almost like I'm referring to our body like we're plants. But those lights just, they can be as bright as they want. They're not feeding or properly giving the right, light nutrition that our body needs. These red lights are set to those specific frequencies because those are the most beneficial for us. And just because you're getting more lights or more frequencies doesn't, more is not always better. And my ultimate thing is when I start looking into my overall health benefit, I start looking at, okay, the people who have a lot of money and they can afford to spend it on studies to learn more about this, what do they tend to do? And NASA, to me, has set the example on a lot of different ways to improve your health and to biohack your energy levels and things like that. And they put these red light panels on their space stations. They see just how necessary it is. When their astronauts are out in space for a long period of time, they start to notice they get depressed, they lose muscle, they get fatigued really easily. And so by using these red lights, they're able to combat most of those issues. They're replicating just what the body needs. To me, the biggest difference is it's like going those, like eating basic carbs. It's like you're checking out and getting a hot dog on your way out, but you really need to be on a fully nutritious diet in our body for that. What its needs are, the biggest need is that red light. And yes, the other spectrums are important. I'm learning a lot more in terms of green light and the benefits that can have on stimulating the pituitary gland. That whole area is fascinating. And so I'm really just trying to gain as much knowledge as I can about it, because light and the way that our body responds to it, it's fascinating. So I see it as providing that proper nutrition and truly being able to feed it with the right light and the right frequency. But personally, I like the comparison. We had a guy come in and test him out, and his review of sitting in red lights, he said he felt like he was sitting in the sun on the beach without the UV rays. I'm like, I can kind of see that. It was relaxing, it's not like you're going to feel hyped up like you want to go run a race when you're done, but I definitely feel a mood boost and an increase in energy.
Yeah. Well, I think light's such an important part of our day-to-day life. And maybe there is some photosynthesis that humans are undergoing. I mean, there's so much we're learning and all the time. And there's actually these I won't go on too big of a tangent here, but there's in Ayurvedic medicine, there are these gurus who claim that they basically look at the sunrise as the sun's coming up, they're getting direct contact with the sun, and then the sunset. And they claim they don't need anything else to survive. I've still, I don't know if that's quantified yet or if there's been kind of an isolated study, but that is some of the, I've read about these gurus who just love, I mean, that's what really, they say all we need is sun. We can live on just sun alone.
Well, and something to that, I was actually reading an article where they were looking at specific times of the day and what kind of frequencies were coming through. And very early in the morning when the sun's just peeking over and you're getting that first morning sunlight, whether it's due to the amount of what's the right word I'm looking for? Objects it has to pass through, certain frequencies are able to make it to us. But early morning light has actually got higher levels of the most beneficial light that we need. So if you're gonna sunbathe at any time, they have found higher levels of red light and near infrared light that are more beneficial for you in the morning and at night. So, it's funny, you start looking into these ancient type of ways of trying to treat the body, and they're tied into things that science are starting to prove. And I think that's just awesome.
Yeah, I think we're just going to see more and more of that. And it's such a fascinating world that we live in, because we fail to realize like there is something magical that happens when you can watch a sunrise or a sunset. And we just think it's the visual, there's more than just the visual aspects of it, and taking that all in. Hopefully next time you guys are all out on the sun, watch the sunset, you'll see, this is pretty darn cool. And actually you may be getting some therapeutic benefit from it. So you're big into light, and I love it. I mean, I think light is so powerful. We have these little Mingen pads in our acupuncture tables, and we put infrared light on our patients, and a lot of times our patients don't realize, they think we're just putting a heat lamp on them, but actually it's infrared light that's passing through a mineral plate. So there's 32 different minerals that light passes through. So it changes the frequency and the vibration, so it penetrates into the area that we're working on. And so by them going and standing in, going to element and getting exposure all over, it's even better. So love what you're doing. But I want to talk about ice now. Now that we got everyone all comfortable, Let's get people uncomfortable. So cryogenic tanks are weird because you got to wear gloves, you got to wear underwear, at least have like the bits covered up because it gets so darn cold in those liquid nitrogen tanks. But how did you get into cryotherapy?
Groupon.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was back in the beginning of my biohacking journey. I was listening to Ben Greenfield a lot, reading a bunch of those different articles. I started learning a little bit about testosterone. And then I started learning about cryo, and I just thought, I've always wanted to try it. You know,
Yeah.
everybody, I'm just curious. And so I bought a 3-pack and I went and did it. And I remember just that rush that I felt when I came out after that first time. I looked at Tom, the owner, and I just went, "Oh, you got me, man." I'm like, I'm not going to be able to stop coming back in here. It felt amazing. And so that was my first hook into cryo, was just that first experience. But following up and seeing the numbers that came along with it kind of just reinforced all of that. But cryo is amazing. And so you say cryo tanks. Ours isn't quite a tank, and the first one I got into wasn't much of a tank either. We refer to ours as a glorified Costco freezer, but it's a cryo built C1 chamber made by US Cryo. But you open the door and it's like you're shopping at Costco, but you step all the way inside.
Yeah.
And you say you have to have shorts on. You don't actually in this one. I will take my shorts off when I get in there for the first couple minutes.
Okay. Well, thanks for the disclosure.
Right? Hey, we have frosted glass up there, so in case anybody wants to do that, you have privacy. We did something that's a little bit different here in terms of privacy, and just an added note is we actually put a sliding door in front of our chamber just in case anybody doesn't want to be watched while they're doing cryotherapy. Um, I found that's one trend in the cryo industry is they like to put the cryo chamber right next to the opening so everybody can see what's going on. And I just thought, well, if I'm taking all my clothes off, I don't know if I want people watching me do that. So um,
We like to watch people suffer, apparently. That
I think so. That's got to be something to it. But no, so that's ultimately what got me into it. And then once I started to see those benefits, kind of like, in our little original intro, I'm the type of person where when I find something that works, I just want to share it with everybody. And so I called my dad and I'm like, look, here's what's going on. Let's do this. And we just kind of went all in and decided we were going to go for it. Utah County didn't have a chamber like what we were looking to put in here. And really the type of chamber is important. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people kind of miss. There was actually a study that was done back in 2013. China, I can put the name, I can copy a link to that actually into the chat here in case anybody wants to check that one out.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's a link. US Cryotherapy actually puts this one on their website. This was done in 2013. And one of the most interesting parts of this was it was comparing the two different kinds of chambers. So the most popular one you'll see is the one where your head's sticking out. Those ones are more nitrogen based. And like I said, ours, you step fully inside. And really the reason why those two are so important is how you're activating your body's cold receptors. We'll get in a little bit more, I'm sure, as we continue to talk about the science behind what's going on inside your body as these cold receptors are being activated. But roughly about 75% of your body's cold receptors are waist and above. And it makes sense. Why? Because that's where all your vital organs are. And that's what it needs to protect. So when you're getting into one of those chambers where your head's sticking out, yeah, they'll advertise that it's, somewhere 250, 300 degrees below zero. But a lot of that is lower half cooling. And so if you get a chance to take a look at that study, they'll show a thermal graphic of somebody who's done the chamber with the nitrogen and then one versus the electric. And the thermal graphics compared next to each other are just not even close. And getting that cooling activation, especially neck and up, is huge. You get vagus nerve stimulation, but you really get a reaction out of your body that kind of provides all around body benefit.
Really, that's phenomenal. So the thermography is actually showing that being in the closed capsule is better than the liquid nitrogen. So what are you pumping through there? Is it just refrigerant or?
Yeah, so we have a giant machine that runs behind the wall that runs just like a normal refrigerant would. So I mean, it does have small amounts of nitrogen used to cool the air, but the only air that's being blown in is just normal air. It's all electric based.
Okay. Oh, that's phenomenal. I'll have to try that out. So the Korean spas, my family, we frequent Korean spas whenever we travel. So very first thing I find is, all right, first stop, we're going to get off the airplane and we're going to go to a Korean spa and get all detoxed. And they always have a cold section along with the hot section. So, they have their infrared, they have their hot and cold plunge. And then you go into, there's a room that's like, it's just basically, it feels like like you said, I mean, Costco seems to be the theme, so I'll stick to that. Yeah, it's like walking into the freezer section at Costco and you're just like, oh, this is cold. So how cold is it? I mean, the Korean spas, it's maybe like 30 degrees. I mean, it's not unbearable by any means. Feels good.
Right. So our chamber, when it's, just kind of humming and ready for the next person to get in, sits at about 150 degrees below zero.
Man, that is awesome.
Right.
So you can feel it on your nose then. I mean, that's and your ear.
Well, so when anybody gets into the chamber, so I make reference to the fact that you can take your shirts off because you have privacy. But when you get in, normally what everybody's wearing is they've got socks and slippers, protect the feet. They're wearing a pair of shorts. Women will have a sports bra with no metal. Then we give people gloves just to protect your fingers. They've got a mask, not COVID related. The reason we have people wear a mask inside of our chamber is to make sure that the air that they're going to be breathing in is warmed on their face before it goes down their throat. I've done some heavy breathing. I don't know if you're into Wim Hof at all.
Absolutely.
I love it. So I try to do a little controlled breathing when I'm in there, and a couple times I've gotten a little into the deep breathing, and that cold air makes you feel a little lightheaded. So it's all just kind of precautionary to make sure you can get it through the full amount of time, which anytime somebody gets into this chamber the first time is 3 minutes.
Okay.
And the reason we do that 3 minutes is we're trying to track the person's body temperature. We're looking to get a specific drop from their skin temperature. So generally speaking, skin temperature, when people get in, they're anywhere between 88 to 94 degrees. And so the theory and the idea behind it is that if you can get their skin temperature to drop anywhere between 30 and 40 degrees, you're going to help to lower their core temperature by around the goal of about 2 degrees, initiating a state of hormonal shock to the body. And that's really the most impactful part of cryo, is that hormonal response that our body goes through. I'm actually going to include, I don't have a link to it, so maybe I can send it to you separately, but there's a great, I wouldn't call it a study. It's more of an article that was written by a woman. Her name's Rhonda Patrick. I don't know if you're familiar with her at all. She's done a ton of work into heat therapy, heat shock, and cold shock, but she's got one just on cold shocking the body. And I mean, she couldn't have outlined it any better. I mean, all the different points that she hits in it pretty much tackles all the different things that we teach in our store. And one of the things that she talks about is that main physiological response. And I'm just kind of looking down at these notes I took from her article. Is there's this release of norepinephrine into the bloodstream, and that is kind of like the main key of what we're looking for when we're doing cryo, is that release of norepinephrine. And so that just so that people understand what norepinephrine is, not to be confused with epinephrine, which is adrenaline. They both impact the sympathetic nerve system in different ways. The key thing that norepinephrine does is it actually helps with vasoconstriction, or helping our blood vessels to constrict. And so, we'll get people that go into anaphylactic shock or something like that. They'll have low blood pressure, and they'll be given norepinephrine to help their blood vessels constrict, restore normal blood pressure. To me, it was really helpful to understand that basic thing, because then I'm like, oh, okay, norepinephrine makes sense now. But when you start to look at norepinephrine, the thing that's fascinating to me about it is to me, it almost kind of resembles light. So light has wave and particle duality. It's two different functions to it, and it impacts our body in different ways. What I love about norepinephrine is that it's not only a hormone, but it's also a neurotransmitter. And so the way that it impacts our body is kind of twofold. And so when you look at norepinephrine as a neurotransmitter, when people start seeing lower levels or decreased norepinephrine neurotransmission activated inside of their brain, we tend to associate those with problems such as inattention, decreased focus, low energy, the things that I was starting to feel when I was in my low T situation. And
Wow.
so what we tend to do, doctors will treat these, ADHD type patients that can't really focus. Well, they give them essentially little uptickers for their norepinephrine transmitters. And so they're using a pill to achieve what we're able to achieve using just cold air and your body's natural responses to the cold. And that to me is the most fascinating thing. It's stopping a dependency on a pill that comes with dehydrating side effects. You're talking about I'd love to hop on your guys' panels and learn more. I've been going through a lot of these podcasts, but talking about hydration, that's another one to me that I just think is fascinating. That the more we understand about how to fully hydrate the body and how that ties into our all around health. But it's funny how cryo is a natural non-dehydrating way to stimulate these receptors, to stimulate the production of norepinephrine, and to do it naturally. And so that's one of the major benefits that comes from doing cryo, and that cold shock feeling that people are going to get.
Yeah, sarcopenia is a condition that so many people are confronting now in their 50s, 60s, 70s. And so one of the beautiful things when you can get that norepinephrine release, you take brittle blood vessels where you're not getting a lot of nutrition supply to the muscles. People's muscles are atrophying as we age. And one of the shortcuts, I mean, this is what biohacking is, just finding a shortcut to your biology. I mean, it's just it's as simple as that. And so one of the things you can look at is by getting in the cryo tank, you actually are preventing that brittleness in your blood vessels. So you get this nice constriction of all the blood. But the beautiful thing is when you have a little dump of norepinephrine, you also get a dump of endorphins that come on the backside of it. And so then all of a sudden your body's like, well, holy smokes, all these catecholamines get produced by your adrenal glands, your body goes into this fight or flight, but then you get this beautiful rush of endorphins. And that's why, one of the reasons I love ice baths and doing the Wim Hof is because you can actually start channeling the pharmacy right between your ears, and there's no adverse consequences. And in fact, Rhonda Patrick, Found My Fitness is her podcast and like YouTube station. She's a great researcher. But one of the
Yes.
things I find is it's like, man, it's actually more powerful, and the long-term benefits of doing these hormetic activities are life-changing. And so I love this conversation, Nathan. We had a couple questions. Cheryl says, "All right, Cheryl, if you have arthritis in my fingers, can I take off the gloves?" I'll turn that over.
Yes. So in that case, what I actually do, I try to get a lot of cold exposure to different areas that I can. What we would do in that case is work with somebody and have maybe take their gloves off for, say, like the last 15 seconds, just to kind of move them around, cool them off. What we can also do, so we have two different kinds of cryotherapy. So we have whole body cryotherapy, which is getting into the chamber itself. And there's even more, a couple more benefits to talk about with that one. We also have a machine that does localized cryotherapy. So it's got this tube that blows out cold air anywhere between 4 and 10 degrees below zero. And so what we can do is, in a case where somebody has severe pain in their hands, we can target that cold air just onto the areas that have pain. We take it all the way down to exactly 32 degrees. It's an effect called flash freezing, which again, we're just looking for a hormonal response from the body. It's in emergency mode, thinking, oh crap, I'm freezing, I shouldn't be here. So it, again, constricts all those blood vessels, brings in a ton of new blood, fresh blood that's just been recently filtered from doing whole body cryo. And so using those two together, very impactful on arthritis. So kind of short answer, yes, you can. We suggest doing it in short bursts in the beginning and then letting us do localized on it, just because we don't know how to monitor your hands through that full session, and we don't want to overcool an area.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Appreciate you answering that. And you
Yeah.
don't any desires of getting something in St. George for those peeps? I mean, it doesn't get very cold down there, so you know, they need this more than ever.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too ahead of myself, but we've been approached by a couple different groups on some expansion efforts, and St. George is the first one we've actually discussed. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well. We might possibly have a location down there early next year.
All right, there you go, Cheryl and Irene. Yes. All right, good. Good. I want to see you ladies freeze. In the meantime, you always have your bathtub, and you can easily get ice. They still make ice down there. I've been there, done that. So that's awesome. So what is the difference, by the way? Have you looked into the difference between, doing the cryo tank versus an ice bath?
Yeah.
Swimming
So,
in a cold glacier-fed lake.
right. The jury is still kind of out. I've seen differing opinions. So I was actually shared an article by a colleague about a month ago where somebody had done a study and they were able to show that cryotherapy chambers were significantly better than cold immersion. And as I read through the study, I was slightly skeptical because I felt as though they really kind of missed the ball on what the overall effect we're looking for when we do cryo is. And let me just kind of explain what I mean by that. There's two different types of thermogenesis that occur within the body. So when we get into a cold chamber, our body has a couple different ways to heat itself up. So the first one is by shivering. So we have our shivering thermogenesis. This is done mostly through muscular reactions. So we get the muscles that, you're shaking a ton and you're really trying to work as hard as you can to work, heat the body up. That's not really the type of thermogenesis or thermogenic reaction that we're looking for. The other one that we're trying to go for is the non-shivering. And the reason we're going for non-shivering is that's actually energy that's being produced by the mitochondria inside of the cell. And that's an area of science that I've read. I've read Rhonda Patrick's article on this section probably 5 or 6 times, and I still have to just like, man, this is heavy. I've got to go back through this because it talks about the positive and electric charges for the mitochondria and how it loses its signal and it starts to develop more of them because the signal isn't there. And I just sit there and think, oh my gosh, this is so over my head. So I just try to keep it as basic as I can. When I'm not shivering, I'm making my mitochondria do the work. When I shiver, my muscles do the work. When I get into a cold bath or I do, jump into a cold lake, it is so hard for me to stop from shivering. It almost feels like a more painful kind of cold, and controlling that shiver is extremely difficult. When I get into this cryo chamber, however, I know that I'm only there for 3.5 minutes. It doesn't go past that, so I can adjust my fan speeds to cool myself off, but I can move while I'm in there. I can just stay focused on making sure that I'm not shivering and I'm really achieving the full effect. So I'm a little biased because I have the chamber here and I have the ability to use it. Somebody who's trying to make a decision between the two, it's pretty close. I just feel like if we're talking about the amount of time that's needed to do it, cryotherapy is just the most effective option. In order to get the same effects of 3 to 3.5 minutes of cryotherapy, you'd have to sit in 20 to 40 degree water for upwards of 45 minutes to an hour. You can take shorter baths and showers, like I did the Wim Hof challenge and doing his cold showers before bed. And I do that in addition to cryo, just overall trying to lower the core temperature. So again, I'm a little biased, but I do believe that cryotherapy is easier to handle and it's easier to activate that non-shaking thermogenic reaction to get more of the benefits.
Yes, and one of the other ways that I've trained my body, my sons actually, we do ice bath challenges, so we see who can stand the longest without shivering, and so the breathing is really your key for stopping that shivering, because yeah, it's an important thing. So the Uller, I don't know if you use chili pad on your bed. You're familiar?
I had an alternative to it and I did it for a little while, but I don't know. It was too uncomfortable to lay on.
What was your alternative?
I don't even remember the name of it, but it just pumped cold water underneath the mattress pad that I was working on.
Okay. Yeah. So I have my wife is always like, man, our bedroom looks like some weird laboratory because of all those gadgets and machines. But yeah, for those of you, especially you St. George peeps, as summer comes along, the chili pads are really nice because you can set the temperature to whatever you want. My wife tends to sleep super like blankets piled on. She sleeps cold. I sleep hot. And so I can't really, change the air too much, but the chili pad's been awesome. So you seem like a dude who would love that. You'd probably put a chili pad and red lights on yours, I could imagine.
Oh yeah, we have a P. So are you familiar with PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic frequencies? I'm sure you are. So we have a machine here. It's made by Resonant Light Technology that does something similar. It's called Pearl, but it mimics the same frequencies through the air. And I had that set up in our bedroom before we launched the store, and I was thinking the same thing. My wife's probably going insane with all these different. I got more foam rollers, yoga wheels, compression boots. I'm just like, yeah, I view myself as like a human experiment. You know, if I can try to go through these therapies in different ways and find out the most effective way, I would rather experiment on myself. That way, when somebody comes in, I can be like, hey, do it this way, this way, this way. You're going to get the best results.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and ask any psychiatrist to do the same.
right.
So, yeah, and I'm someone who's constantly experimenting in my body. My Japanese mentor used to say, if you get sick or if you get injured, Dr. Mike, I would say, that is your gift from the universe, Reagan. And now you can learn how your body works. And so it's really powerful. So even in Chinese medicine, I mean, they've been experimenting on their health for thousands of years. I mean, they were looking for the immortal elixir. So they're out there, looking at herbs. They're finding lifestyle that really is congruent with nature. And so, all biohacking is, and the light therapy and the cold, this is using technology and it's using science. And it's saying, well, how can we shortcut that? And I love your answer on the, because I've asked people all the time, cold plunge versus crowd tank. And I can tell you that a cold plunge and taking an ice bath is a lot more work than it is to just go hop in for 3 minutes and then hop out. But for those of you, if it's late at night, you don't want to get in your car and drive and go get that thing done. Well, put some ice in your bath because it makes a huge difference. And yeah, oh, thanks, Carly. Carly's provided a ton of links for you guys in the show notes here
Oh
in the
yeah.
chat. Have those posted as well. So Nathan, if you look at the next iteration, so there's a lot with cold shock proteins, heat shock proteins that we've talked about today. We look at light therapy, we look at the cold genesis. What's the next step? What do you see is the future? I notice you're wearing an aura ring. I take it. Um, yeah, there it is. So what do you see as kind of on the horizon in the biohacking world, or even an element there?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's a fun, I don't know. I really like where healthcare is right now. I feel as though the most recent lockdowns and everything have really focused people to be aware of their health and to put a lot more attention into not just doing what they're told, but actually reading studies and finding things that are truly beneficial. I am a believer that ultimately our health is going to come down to reconnecting our body to the natural elements of the earth, which is, I mean, obviously why I, wanted to name my company Element. And so every therapy that comes out that I feel is in some way reconnecting us to where I believe our bodies came from is going to help us to improve overall. I mean, you start to look at some of the discoveries that have been made in fighting viruses and bacterias and sicknesses. I mean, there's a plaque down in, I think it's Argentina, where there was a piece of soil and they pulled a little microorganism from the soil and they were able to produce a whole line of pharmaceuticals to combat a disease that we had been dealing with. And to me, I sit there and I think, well, there it is right there. We've lost a lot of our connection. And so I see a lot of these frequency beds that I've heard of where they're set around, I believe it's, what is it? What's the frequency setting? Something like 253 hertz or something like that. But just anything that's natural, that's using vibrations, lights, temperatures to try and shock the body, to teach it to do what it was meant to do. Regardless of your political opinions or ideas on health and vaccines and all those things, there's an argument to be made that the human body has the ability and the power to heal itself from most of the problems that we face if we just provide it the right tools. And so I see this whole industry as just going as natural as possible.
Yeah.
I would really like to see blood work become a big part of it. I would love to see people aware of what's really going on inside of their bodies, not just when they start to see issues, but even when they're healthy, and being able to track those levels on a month to month, quarter to quarter type basis. I think just being overall aware of our entire health is really the direction that it's going. So, frequency beds, things like that, deep
Yeah.
breathing, but just reconnecting the body. I think that's the major direction that we're looking to go.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful because, yeah, we all said, man, we got this crazy virus coming in. Let's run away and hide from it. And I said, look, that's not how viruses have worked. I mean, you look at it, it's always going to affect the 10% of the population that's the most vulnerable and susceptible. And that those 10% are the ones that need the light therapy, they need the cryo tanks, they've got to get the vibration fixed. And now we've got 5G coming on. And so we have all these EMFs that our body's combating with, and we do the blood work. So, by the way, Nathan, we do the biohacking and then we do the blood work to make sure that they're actually in alignment and we're making progress. And I can tell you, most of the blood labs I read within 6 months, people have a 300% improvement in their scores. And so we use objective data to quantify what we're doing because I can hallucinate pretty easy, right? I can be like, oh, you're good. I'm doing my job. But I'm like, no, let's look at things objectively. But I can tell you what, I think you're dead on. Those vibrations, just by lowering your vibration, your immune system lowers. I mean, they found just by having a negative attitude for a day, basically puts your lymphocytes in a coma-like state. So your white blood cells have no idea how to react because they're so stuck in your negative cycle. And so you get stuck on CNN news for a long time, and that's one of the worst things you can do to your vibration and the light in your body and the frequencies. And so yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think frequencies and energy is kind of a word that gets thrown out there, but it's way too broad. We got to start talking in frequencies because these frequencies have already been quantified and we know what they can do.
Yeah, and I think the knowledge that a select few have is starting to leak through to the rest of us peons. I feel like there's been a lot more knowledge of the impact of frequencies than we've been kind of led to know about. And I think that's what I love about the time we're in right now. People are just so aware. You look at these ketogenic diets that are popping out. And yeah, we've had Atkins and all these other alternatives that have come out through the years. I just feel like people are so much more aware and they're asking questions and the right questions. And so when we start to see things like frequencies impacting our overall health, when we start to see things like, cold shock, heat shock impacting our health, it's like, why would I not do that? Why would I not break free from, my dependency on all of these over-the-counter medications, these drugs that I'm getting prescribed? It's never ending.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I'm going to circle back. I've asked several guests on the show. It's like, well, if you were the Minister of Health, let's just assume in 2020, a little over a year ago, the government said, all right, Nathan, we want you to give us kind of a natural strategy, what's a plan of action that people would have a choice to deploy in this whole, kind of immune state that we're in, and this concern of a virus that's got some teeth to it. I mean, we don't want to downplay that, but it's also like, well, what should we do, Nathan? What would be your how would you address the nation and the world in some things they could do for their overall health?
I think the easy answer for me is to jump right into, do cryo and red light. I had a conversation yesterday. The owner of Fascia Blasters, I don't know if you're familiar with them at all. They're right around the corner from us. They use a fascia blasting tool and they try to work through different pathways. But the women were in here and they were telling me their testimony of this fascia blasting and how it turned their lives around. They were bedridden and all these different things. And I'm like, I've got similar experiences that I could share with people that come in and do cryo. And so and as I was sitting there talking to him, I thought, it's interesting how we're all on this same journey. We're all taking kind of different paths, and some path might not be the one right for this one, and this path might be right for somebody else. My first suggestion was that we all need to become self-aware.
Yeah.
To me, that's our first step. And I think when we become self-aware, and I don't just mean that of our existence, I mean that we really understand how our body feels. When I feel a pain and I feel it in my arm, do I really track down where that pain is? Do I really understand my kinetic chain? Do I understand how that may be impacting something else? If I'm feeling down for a day, am I aware of what I might have done differently in my habits, in my behaviors that could have impacted that? Did I eat something, drink something? And I think we go through life so much of the time unaware of our surroundings and the things we're doing that are impacting us. And I think that would be my first step. If I could be in control of it, and give my advice would be, take control of your health, but just wake up and be aware, pay attention to what your body's telling you, because most of the time it's going to give you the answers, and it's going to let you know when you're doing something right and when you're doing something wrong. And
Yeah,
it's the most powerful computer that's ever been made.
that's
So
you sound like Buddha, the Buddha be awake. So that's awesome because if you think about it, your food has a vibration, right? It's got frequency, it's got energy to it. The water you drink, I mean, how many of you are drinking tap water still? I mean, that's going to, 1 week of tap water, your thyroid function gets depleted. I mean, you think about the air that you breathe, 60% of pollution that we get comes from our house, our internal environments. And then now you just basically, we lock people in the house, we cover the face, we keep people socially distanced. And I couldn't agree with you more that if we just became aware of what's going on in our health, maybe we'd have a little more sanity around this whole thing. And so I think I agree. It's been the most fascinating time to be in healthcare has been the last year. I've never had so much explosion and innovation. I just got off the phone with a great scientist who's in the stem cell department, and we're just talking about some great collaborations we're going to do. I've met the coolest people in the peptide industry. It's just been a really fun year. And it couldn't have happened. I mean, the environment did have to shift where now people are going to have to choose what direction they're going to go in their health. Are they going to just rely on the mainstream narrative and media to tell them what to do about their health and just have it externally fed to us where we're mandated to do certain things like get vaccinated? Or are we actually going to start owning our health? And I think America is a country of ownership, and we take responsibility. So hopefully we'll be leaders in the world like we have been for the last 100 years. But yeah, I mean, my hope is that people will, as you say, wake up. So what are three things that people could do as we kind of finish up, Nathan, to wake up?
oh man, that's a tough one. Take time for yourself, I think is a big one. Set aside some time to clear your mind. I know meditation usually gets linked to just Jedi work, but meditation is life changing. Take time for yourself mentally, and then take time for your health. Um, but I think doing it with those that are closest to you would be my third thing. Don't do it alone. So when you're going to make a decision to diet or improve your health, hey, I want to try something, try to find those that are around you that are going to help support you on that journey, because doing it by yourself isn't going to get you through it. I started keto. It was hard for me to stay on it. When my wife started doing it, that changed everything for me. When she was on board with it, when she started doing red light and we just gave birth. She just gave birth to our fourth child, and she did red light through the whole pregnancy. I mean, she bought into all of this. For me, when she was buying into it and the people around me started to experience it and feel the improvements, that was such a big thing for me. And so, yeah, take some time for yourself, for your mental health, for your physical health, and then get the people around you involved in whatever you're doing, so that you'll stick with it. And then educate yourself. Sorry, I know you asked for three, but I'm gonna throw that fourth one in.
Well, we'll give
Just
you
read.
that's a beautiful bonus you gave us. So I think this is genius. So Nathan, it's been so fun having you here, and Element is a collaborative partner with our Anodyne Pain and Wellness Solutions Clinic. So everyone go down there, do some work with Nathan. Nathan, how can people get in touch with you or at least get your services?
Yeah. So if anybody wants to reach me directly with any type of questions, there's my email address. So just nathan@elementcw.com. I respond to all, messages that I get there. All of our information's online. We don't require appointments. So if anybody wants to come in and try cryotherapy, come on in. We've got an electric chamber, so we don't have to have you set it a week out, or give us a call. We're always here and trying to give as much information as possible.
And any particular I guess emails is kind of the best way, and any particular offers you have for our audience, or what can they expect?
Yeah, so there's one that popped up on here. So $10 for your first time cryo. So just $10 cryo. Normally it's $35 a session. We have memberships set up that are completely unlimited. So when you come in, we can walk through all those. People who are new to what we offer, we do something called the Wellness Starter Pack that gives you a chance to do cryo, red light, compression, localized, everything we have except for EWAT, and that one's 49 bucks. And so those are a couple really, really good offers that people that are new to this or want to come try it can give it their first try.
Love it. Well, thanks so much. And Carly did post that there. Ruth's wondering where you're located, so maybe you could share your address.
Yeah, I'll share the address on here. We're in Lehigh, over by the Smiths off Temp Highway, right across from Neaters.
Right. There it is. Okay, Carly's got it there for you. Awesome. All right, Nathan. Well, this has been super exciting. So I can't wait to come down there and check it out and get my freeze on and my light on and
Right?
get all cleaned up.
No,
So
this has been awesome. Thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. This has been a blast.
yeah, it's been really fun. My pleasure. We'll talk soon, Nathan. You take care, and everybody on the hack community. Can't wait to see you on Wednesday night at 4:30, and then we'll see you next Thursday at 9 o'clock here on Your Healthy Self with Reagan. Love you guys. See you later.